I still remember the weight of his hand on my shoulder that night. The Oval Office was darker than usual, just 2 lamps casting long shadows across the resolute desk. The air smelled of fresh polish and old leather, the kind of scent that reminds you power has a history. "Kash," Trump said, his voice lower than I'd ever heard it, "they tried to destroy me. Now it's your turn to make sure they never do it again." My throat tightened. Cold sweat traced down my spine. This wasn't just another meeting. This was the moment that would define everything. "The FBI," he continued, walking toward the window overlooking the south lawn, "has been weaponized. You know it. I know it. The whole damn country knows it." He turned to face me, his eyes sharp despite the late hour. He tapped his desk twice, his signature move before delivering hard truths. "I need someone who won't flinch. Someone who understands what loyalty actually means in this city." Loyalty. That word hung in the air like smoke. In Washington, loyalty is currency, but it's also poison. I'd seen what happened to those who pledged it too loudly, and to those who withdrew it too quietly. Michael Flynn, Jeff Sessions, Bill Barr. All of them started with promises, ended with betrayals or broken careers. "Sir," I began, but he raised his hand. "Don't answer yet. I want you to understand what I'm asking." He sat on the edge of his desk, something he rarely did. It made him seem almost vulnerable. "When I put you in that building, there will be people who hate you from day one. Career bureaucrats who think they own the place. Agents who leaked to the press about me. Lawyers who slow-walked every investigation that mattered." My pulse quickened. I'd spent years in the shadows, National Security Council, House Intelligence Committee, Defense Department. I knew the players. I knew the games. But directing the FBI? That was entering the arena where lions had been trained to eat outsiders. "They'll come after your family," Trump said, his voice hardening. "They'll dig up every parking ticket, every college party, every email you ever sent. The Washington Post will write hit pieces. CNN will call you dangerous. Your old friends will distance themselves." He paused, letting the reality sink in. "And you know what? I can't protect you from all of that. I can give you the authority, the position, the power, but the target on your back, that's yours to carry." I thought about my parents. Immigrants who came here believing in the American dream, who taught me that the system, despite its flaws, was worth fighting for. Would they understand this decision? Would they see this as service or as selling my soul? My phone buzzed in my pocket. My wife. I silenced it without looking. "Why me?" I asked. The question felt both obvious and necessary. Trump smiled, not his usual confident grin, but something closer to respect. "Because you've already been through the fire, Kash. You worked on the Russia investigation. You saw how they fabricated evidence, how they leaked to friendly journalists, how they protected their own while destroying anyone who challenged the narrative." He leaned forward. "You're not coming in naive. You know exactly what you're walking into." He was right. I'd seen the texts between FBI officials mocking the president. I'd read the manipulated FISA applications. I'd watched as career officials slow-rolled congressional oversight, claiming independence while playing political favorites. "But here's what they don't understand," Trump continued, his energy building. "The American people are done with the games. They're tired of a justice system that has one set of rules for the connected and another for everyone else. They want someone who will actually drain the swamp, not just talk about it." Drain the swamp. The phrase that launched a movement and became a punchline. But standing there in that moment, it didn't feel like rhetoric. It felt like a genuine question. Would I have the courage to confront an institution that protected itself above all else? "I need a week," I said. Trump's expression didn't change. "You have 3 days. After that, I'm announcing it with or without your confirmation. If you're in, I need you all in. If you're out, I need to know now so I can find someone else." The ultimatum wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. And in Washington, clarity is rarer than honesty. I walked out of the White House that night with my head spinning. The streets of D.C. were empty, the monuments lit up like promises carved in stone. The grandfather clock in the corridor had ticked like a countdown, each second a reminder that my time to decide was running out. I thought about Washington and Lincoln and all the men who'd faced impossible choices in that same building. None of them had perfect information. None of them knew how history would judge them. My phone buzzed. A text from an old colleague. Heard rumors you're meeting with him. Don't do it, Kash. It's career suicide. I stared at the blinking cursor on my phone. Don't do it, Kash. It's career suic. I slid the phone back into my pocket and kept walking. The city was quiet, but Washington is never asleep. It just whispers instead of shouts. Somewhere behind lit windows, decisions were being made that would never see daylight. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw headlines that didn't exist yet. Controversial appointment shakes FBI. Trump loyalist moves to take control. Experts warn of authoritarian turn. Experts. Anonymous officials. Senior sources familiar with the matter. I'd spent years watching how the machine worked. First came the leaks, carefully framed, always plausible. Then the op-eds. Then the investigations into the investigation. By the time the facts emerged, the damage was already done. At 3:17 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. They're already digging. Check your college years. Georgetown party photos. Someone just pulled your credit report. I sat up in bed. They weren't waiting for my answer. The next morning, I drove past FBI headquarters on Pennsylvania Avenue. The Hoover building squatted there like a concrete fortress, ugly, imposing, deliberately unwelcoming. I'd been inside dozens of times before. I knew the hallways, the security checkpoints, the institutional arrogance baked into the walls. What I didn't know was how many people inside already considered me an enemy. Inside that building were agents who believed they were patriots, and others who believed their badge placed them above elected officials, above oversight, above consequence. Most were good people. But institutions aren't corrupted by the majority. They're captured by a few who know how to pull levers quietly. My wife finally called. "Are the rumors true?" she asked. No small talk. No warm-up. "They might be," I said. Silence. Then, "If you do this, they won't stop, Kash. Not at you. Not at us." "I know. And you're still considering it?" I looked at the building again. At the American flag hanging limp in the still air. "If people like us don't," I said slowly, "then only one kind of person ever will." She exhaled. "Then promise me something. Anything. Don't lie to yourself about what this costs." By day 2, the pressure doubled. Former colleagues stopped returning calls. Friendly journalists suddenly wanted off-the-record background conversations. A non-profit I'd advised quietly removed my name from their website. Someone leaked a partial memo I'd written years earlier, out of context, of course. Twitter did the rest. That afternoon, I got the call. Oval Office. 6 p.m. Trump was standing when I walked in. Same lamps. Same shadows. "You see how fast it starts," he said. I nodded. "They don't even wait for the announcement anymore." "No," I said. "They don't." He studied my face. "You can still walk away." I thought about that incomplete text. About my parents. About the agents I knew who hated what the Bureau had become but were too afraid to say it out loud. "No," I said. "If I walk away now, they win without a fight." A slow smile crossed his face. "Then let me be very clear," Trump said. "This isn't about revenge. This is about exposure. Sunlight. Accountability. You touch politics, they'll crucify you. You touch corruption, they'll try to destroy you." He leaned in. "So don't miss." 3 days later, the announcement went public. Within minutes, cable news exploded. Panels filled with former officials who'd suddenly grown concerned. Words like dangerous, unprecedented, threat to democracy were repeated until they lost meaning. And deep inside the Hoover building, phones lit up. Emergency meetings were called. Old alliances reactivated. Hard drives quietly encrypted. Because they knew something important. This time, the outsider wasn't coming in blind. This time, he already knew where the bodies were buried. And this time, they were running out of places to hide. I stood in the darkness of my office, the weight of my decisions pressing down on me like a 1,000-pound stone. The screen in front of me flickered with the latest intelligence reports, nothing but more names, more corruption, and more ways the system was working against us. But it wasn't just about uncovering corruption anymore, it was about survival. I'd crossed a line, and now the game had changed. I knew what was coming. The threats had gone from subtle warnings to blunt force attacks. My phone buzzed. Another anonymous number. You think you're invincible? You're not. You have no idea what you're up against. I tossed the phone aside, ignoring it. There was no time for fear. The people who had been pulling the strings for decades had underestimated me, and now I was going to show them what it meant to be underestimated. The days blurred together. The media was relentless, reporting every misstep, twisting every statement. The attacks on me, on my integrity, were escalating. The White House staff had begun to distance themselves, sensing the storm that was building. But I couldn't pull back now. I had no choice. There were moments, quiet moments, when I thought about what this had cost me. My family, my friends, the quiet life I once imagined for myself. But that life was long gone now, and there was no turning back. I was in the middle of a strategy meeting with my most trusted allies when it hit. The door slammed open, and 2 FBI agents stormed into the room. They were carrying a file. A thick one. "You need to see this," one of them said, placing the file on the table. I opened it without hesitation. Inside were documents, hundreds of pages, exposing the most dangerous conspiracy I'd ever seen. Names I'd known. Agencies I'd trusted. And at the center of it all, one name stood out. It was my name. The game had changed. They weren't just targeting me anymore. They were trying to destroy everything I had built. The Bureau. The country's very trust in the justice system. Everything was in danger now. And the worst part? I didn't know who was behind it yet. Later that night, I found myself standing at the edge of the South Lawn, staring out at the city that had become both my battleground and my prison. I could feel the eyes of Washington on me, even when I was alone. The whispers had only grown louder, and it was clear that they were waiting for me to make my next move. The storm wasn't just coming. It was here. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. It was an encrypted message from an unknown source. "The truth is out there. But it's hidden. If you want to expose it, you'll need to go deeper than ever before." It was a puzzle. A challenge. And I had never been more determined to solve it. The next few weeks felt like a blur of chaos. Each day brought a new scandal, a new leak, a new betrayal. The very people I thought were allies were now working against me. But even as the storm raged around me, I couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was still ahead. I had seen the conspiracy. I had seen the faces behind the lies. And now I knew what I had to do. I started digging. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about power. This wasn't even just about control. This was about a war for the very soul of the country. And the people who had been in charge for far too long were about to learn that I wasn't backing down. The calls from the White House had stopped. The messages from my former colleagues were fewer, but more pointed. They all had the same message. "You're in over your head, Kash. Let it go." But there was one voice, one person who stood by me through it all. She was my only true ally in this fight. Her name was Rachel, a former reporter turned whistleblower who had risked everything to expose the deep state. She had always believed in the system, in the idea of a just government. But after years of watching it crumble from within, she'd chosen a side, and it was mine. Rachel sat across from me in my office one night, eyes tired but resolute. "We're getting close, Kash," she said. "Too close. But I think you're about to make a decision that will change everything." I didn't need to ask her what she meant. I already knew. It was time to take the fight directly to the heart of the beast. The night before the big reveal, I stood once again in front of the resolute desk, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on my shoulders. The evidence was ready. The truth was ready. But I wasn't sure I was. I picked up the phone. The call went through. "Mr. President," I said, my voice steady. "It's time." The line went silent for a moment.